got misdirected down to the Central West End into William Greenleaf Eliot's old church. And so they had to be brought back here later. So thank you very much for waiting. Of all the things that I brought today, I forgot my reading glasses. So I'm going to take these off, and I can read with these.
You want some? I have some.
Well, but they're not my prescription. Yeah. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for coming. And for those who are more distantly watching online, thank you for joining us. For those of you who are present here in the sanctuary, there's going to be a reception, including food and continuous slideshow after the service in Adams Hall, which is through the double doors here, and then to the left, the doors there, the short hallway on the left. On Friday, I heard a program by Terry Gross, hostess of PBS's weekly show Fresh Air, in which she spoke for an hour about her husband, a famous jazz critic and historian who died 2 weeks before on April 14th. Terry presented the program, including reading excerpts from some of his reviews, with the same calmness, equanimity, and steadiness, a voice that you're accustomed to hearing in any other of her broadcast interviews. Of course, she had the advantage of retaping anything that didn't meet her expectations for the presentation. I don't have that luxury. So if I have to stop and recompose myself from time to time, please bear with me. The music you've been hearing as you're filing in was Johannes Brahms' third piano sonata, opus 5. The composer's first great work. It was recorded, bear with me, in May of 1961 at the University of Colorado, a day or two after Kathy's junior recital. Music will prove the underlying foundation of today's service. A few weeks ago, I was asked if this service would be a memorial or a celebration of life. I can't separate the two, for it both memorializes Kathy and celebrates her life and her impact on her family and the many other people she touched as teacher, friend, and performing musician. This afternoon we'll pay tribute to her by trying our best to explain just who she was in as full a sense as we can. As you will see, the motto on the screen at the top of the slide is fitting for the person we knew. And loved. Since this is a celebration of Kathy and music, feel free to applaud after performances. So, exactly 5 weeks. Exactly 5 weeks before I was born in Detroit, Michigan, Kathy Jean Stahl was born to Albert Fred Stahl Jr. and Eleanor Kinney Stahl in Denver, Colorado. How the lives of we two came to intersect is the beginning of our story. In 1942, in the midst of World War II, my parents moved our family to near Golden, Colorado, a small town a little outside of Denver. And Kathy's parents moved their family northwest of the city to the growing suburb town of Westminster. Her voice from birth was characterized by softness and a certain breathiness, which contributed to a natural shyness of speech and discomfort among groups of people. As she grew up, she relied frequently on gestures, on tone of voice, on facial expressions, and expressions of personal empathy as fundamental to the communication, rather than brilliance of conversation. She also experienced the world more through how it made her feel inside than through the exterior observations of objects and events. However, when she began to study the piano at about age 7, it was the beginning of her developing an extraordinary eloquence and precision and virtuosity of communication through music, rather than through words. In speech and demeanor, she was quiet and private. Through music, she expressed a much larger and deeper world of feeling with astonishing depth of insight and clarity in its articulation. So before going any further, I want to let Kathi herself speak to you through her preferred medium. This is the first movement of the Beethoven 30th Piano Sonata in E major, recorded in 1962. This was recorded live, in live performance, on a reel-to-reel tape, before you could edit things. She was 22 years old. Kathy's and my stars began to intersect in the spring of 1956 when we were both 16 years old. She was studying Latin at Westminster High School at the same time I was studying Latin at Golden High School. Both Latin programs belonged to a statewide organization, the Junior Classical League for the Promotion of Latin Studies. The league met once a year for an annual convention in that year on the Colorado College campus in Colorado Springs. At the beginning of the academic year, the organization had decided to sponsor a contest to write a song for the Colorado chapter. I wrote lyrics and set them to the English tune The British Grenadiers, which won the competition. It was arranged that I would present it to attendees at the afternoon General Assembly, and they would sing it to a piano accompaniment. I was scheduled to meet with the selected pianist after lunch in the lobby of the residence hall where we were dining. And so we met over a Steinway grand piano. Where she had been playing the first movement of Beethoven's Waldstein Sonata. I was immediately both impressed and jealous because I'd been studying piano from age 8 and the Waldstein Sonata was certainly beyond my capacities. The Waldstein Sonata thus played a key role in our lives, which our son, Kenny, many years later, learned to play. This was in fact the last piece Kathy heard him playing. And in honor and remembrance of that event, he will perform an excerpt from the first movement after offering us some reflections on his mother.
He's sitting right next to me. Well, when you lose your mom, it's this strange combination of feeling holes everywhere in your body, in your mind, in your soul. And at the same time, you feel closer, more connected. I feel like she's here right now. And which gives me hope and promise and joy. So what I'm going to talk about is this weird mix of remembrance and the future and joy. I stopped to think about, what my mom really meant to me, and I could say great mom, pianist, teacher. I had to think more about it, so I came up with 3 different things. Well, they're similar, but a little different. The first is that I actually believe she was a world-class athlete. Now, if you know my mom, I don't know if she ever ran in her life. I can't remember. Actually, I remember one time she ran. We were in Florence when I was a little kid, and we were coming back from I think it was the grocery store. And there was this strange man, Italian man, started following us. And it was, this is a long time ago. And she said, looked at me and said, "Let's run." So we ran back to the apartment with our groceries. But she actually really was a world-class athlete. The other side of her family, they're not here today, but they are online watching this. So my Uncle Fred, her brother, couldn't make the trip. He's also ill. But I know he's there. Fred's there. His wife Linda, Kirsten and Daniel. That whole side of the family are ridiculously athletically gifted. My grandfather was a scratch golfer, shot in the 60s. I think he might have won the Colorado Amateur Golf Championship and could just play any sport kind of naturally. He was a true natural. My uncle is a great athlete. Kirsten almost became a professional figure skater. Daniel is a reckless and fearless skier. They all play golf. Just incredible athletes. And then I was thinking, but my mom doesn't run. However, like being a pianist playing the way that you heard my mom played, it takes tremendous hand-eye coordination. It takes tremendous discipline. It takes excellence, focus, incredible focus. and a desire to really perform well. And, she was as great an athlete as any of us. She would laugh probably if I said that, but it's true. The second thing I thought of was Energizer Bunny. So, again, my mom was incredibly active and dynamic. She was always on the go, always accomplishing. She could get, something that would take most of us a week done in a day, and then she would add to the list. And so I'll never forget when I was younger, I guess it was in Vermont, and we were living in Vermont, and it was an afternoon after school, and I said, gosh, I'm kind of bored, Mom. Like, what am I going to do? When you're a kid, what am I going to do? Like, I want to do something fun. And she immediately said, well, hang on one second. And she came back with a list. And it was a long list. I eventually got it done, and then I was never bored again. So just incredible energy. Another example of that comes to mind, Dad will remember this really well, is that they were masters at Baker, which I think the picture here is at Baker House when they were masters. And I was actually in school at Rice at the time, so I was around them. And they had these incredible study breaks. It was renowned across Rice University. If you wanted great food, if you wanted things to drink, if you wanted an incredible organization, the place to go was Baker House. And even though it wasn't really very cool for me to have my parents at the university I was going to school, I was so incredibly proud of those study breaks, and of course I crashed them all the time. So I think that's the second thing that is, I think, unique. And then the third, I would say kind of beloved guru is what I came up with. More than a teacher, a spiritual guide, someone that was so incredibly intuitive and listening, and as Dad was saying, able to connect with people without words and cared so deeply, but also gurus hold you accountable. And so, it was this combination of love and caring and, desire for you to be accountable to yourself and to others. Even if you just listen to the way she played, and I think Brahms probably said this at one point, he wasn't always sure what he was thinking, but that he was literally connected from God to the music. And sometimes when I hear things like what my mom is playing, it makes me feel that way. So this piece that I'm going to attempt to play, that my mom probably played flawlessly when she was 16, and I'm only going to play a little bit of it, also reminds me of these three attributes. It's pretty hard, as Dad said, to play at 16. So it's challenging. It's energetic, like the Energizer Bunny. At times you'll hear that. And then it's very kind of connected to God and very spiritual. So, Mom, somehow you've managed to get me to keep practicing, even now. So I practiced a little bit before this, and I'll do my best. And you'll always be with me. And we'll do everything I can to be the best person I can with my family. Amy, happy.
I should tell you that in his non-musical life, Kenny is a senior partner in Boston Consulting Group, which keeps him on the go constantly. He just flew in from a business trip to Italy just at the end of this last week. After our original meeting and presentation together of the new state song at Colorado College, Kathi and I met again a couple of times over music while still in high school. The next year, we both enrolled as freshmen at the University of Colorado in Boulder. She as a piano major, and I as a math and physics major. But I spent far more time in the practice rooms of the music school than with my calculus homework, and finally convinced my parents that if I couldn't make it as a concert pianist, which was my dream at that time, that I could make a living as a professor of music in a university music department. So the next year, too, I became a piano major at Boulder. By then, she and I had struck up a closer relationship within a small, close-knit group of piano students. As undergraduates do, especially in the arts, we talked a lot about philosophy of life, our values, systems of belief, and of course the meaning of music for ourselves and in society. In those first 2 years in the music school, we laid the foundation of an indissoluble connection through the fundamental driving forces of our lives, while mutually supporting one another's personal growth and musical development. That foundation sustained our bond through all the trials and tribulations of our long lives together to the very end. Eventually, we began to look at another with different sets of eyes than just friends. And because of our previous friendship, it didn't take long to take our relationship to a wholly new level. We married in the fall of 1961 and became Kenny's parents the following August, while still undergraduates. This is a picture, you see, it was taken on the stage of the recital hall at the University of Colorado, showing our new family, appropriately seated at and upon a pair of concert grand pianos. This was shortly before we left for graduate school at the University of Illinois as candidates for the Master of Music degree in piano performance, though I had already begun thinking that perhaps my strength was more in the academic scholarly area than in performance. By this time, Kathi had already begun teaching Kenny, as witnessed by this photograph. At Illinois, I began my transformation into a musicologist while Kathi continued her piano studies and began teaching for the first time a significant number of undergraduate students, beginning to develop penetrating psychological insights into her students and to finding many diverse ways in language to convey musical thoughts to them. After leaving the University of Illinois, we spent a year teaching each half-time at Cornell University in Ithaca, New York, Kathi sharing piano students with the professor of music, Malcolm Bilson, her former teacher at Illinois, and I assisting with the music history survey. Then I managed to snag my first full-time job at Middlebury College in Vermont, while Kathi taught all the piano students. As my colleague there, Dr. Emery Fanning, reminisced recently, she was such a fine pianist and generous teacher who had a wonderful influence on the level and quality of the teaching of applied music at the college. And one of her former students there, Emery's wife Diana, herself a highly esteemed pianist in the Northeast, wrote, "Kathi was a role model for us as female undergraduates, a mother, a gracious faculty wife, a wonderful pianist, and a sympathetic and demanding teacher. She was ahead of her time." It was at Middlebury that our daughter Julie was born. Kathi also taught Julie piano, who showed great talent from a very early age. She began to play simple little piano pieces on Kathy's student recitals when she was age 4, but Kathi could never be sure of just what key she would start a piece in and play it. After our sojourn at Middlebury, we had the great good fortune to land at Rice University in Houston, Texas, a small, excellent university that was finally using an endowment left for that purpose to start a brand new music school. The year before, we had spent 8 months in Florence, Italy, on a fellowship. But moving to Houston was more of a culture shock than moving to Italy had been. Our son Kenny had by now grown his legs long enough to touch the floor while sitting at the piano. He showed great promise, but was also very active athletically, and as you heard about his heritage, athletic heritage, limiting the time he spent practicing. Excuse me. Eventually, at age 12, as a pre-teenager, it was time to find him another teacher in Houston besides his mother. After moving to Houston, we decided to give Julie a try at the violin. The problem was there were already 3 large pianists in the house. Kenny was already 14, and finding time and space on the piano bench for little Julie was difficult. She needed something distinctively her own to do. Fortunately, in a city like Houston, there were good violin teachers available. At Rice, Kathi became the piano teacher of all the undergraduate non-music majors. And during these years, she worked closely with Julie on the violin, as Julie herself will explain in her reflections upon her mother. No.
The mother-daughter relationship is a special one, and the relationship I had with my mom was certainly that. At every stage of my life, she made me feel completely safe and at home in her presence, and deeply cared for. Those who knew her know she never said anything she didn't mean. She had a soft, kind way to express whatever it was she wished to communicate, and whatever she said was always genuine. From the time I was little, there was this intuitive understanding between us, which felt like a unique bond we shared. She was a terrific listener and observer with the ability to pick up on subtleties. We often shared glances as if to say to one another, "We know what's really going on here." My mom strongly believed one should always be giving and kind toward people, the people closest to you. That is how she lived her life. She gave up her own needs in order to care for everyone else's. She spent hours assisting with my violin practice when I was young, accompanying me to all of my lessons, taking detailed notes each time, and making sure I followed through on all instructions. Although she was the most dedicated mother around, she was never pushy. The extent of her pushiness was rewarding me with cute stickers or a dollar bill after completing a good day of practice. There are so many special times we shared that keep coming to my mind these days. We loved to go shopping together and had the opportunity to do so in many countries. We would walk around talking about life, sharing ideas and stories, and just have a beautiful time together. I will forever cherish those moments. Someone close to me, who has suffered many losses in his life, said he feels it's important to take something special from those who aren't with us anymore and try to carry that something special forward. There are so many of my mom's qualities that I'd like to try to carry forward. Her humility, kindness, sincerity, generosity, and selflessness are just a few. I love you, Mom, and although I miss you terribly, I feel you right beside me every moment of the day.
You'll hear Julie perform towards the end of today's service. This is, here's Kathi and Julie after performing together in 1980. This picture was taken at Baker Residential College, which Kenny mentioned, on the Rice University campus, which represents another chapter in Kathy's and my life together. Rice has a very robust residential college system with a core of faculty masters, one couple for each college, who were required to live on campus and expected to have close interaction with the students. In 1979, we were selected by the students of Baker College and the current committee of masters to become master and co-master for a 5-year term of the most venerable college on the Rice campus. To prepare the new masters for the job, the committee of masters held a 2-day retreat to explain to the 2 new couples our roles and responsibilities. Aside from developing social relationships with the other masters, the retreat consisted of discussion of all the things that could go wrong in a college housing 220 undergraduate students, and the various university offices and resources available for dealing with them. After 2 days of this, Kathi and I drove very nervously back to our new home on campus, saying to each other, "My God, what do we get ourselves into?" This is us in front of the Baker House door. As it turned out, almost all of those things described in our retreat did indeed go wrong, but spread out over 5 years, not 2 days. Those 5 years turned out to be among the happiest in our lives. We were extraordinarily busy, on duty as many as 14 to 16 hours a day, but the interaction with a variety of students was incomparably rich and rewarding. For Kathi, it was especially useful in stripping away her natural shyness to becoming more open, welcoming, and proactive in dealing with the students. She became famous on campus, as Kenny has already described, as the queen of study breaks, providing in our house all kinds of nourishment at times of academic stress, not only for members of Baker College, but also students from other colleges, which she welcomed all, wherever they came from, with the same warmth and joyous spirit. You want to go on to the next one? Yeah, thanks, Ken. It was also in our years at Baker College that Kathi purchased a handmade reproduction of a Mozart-era forte piano and began practicing performing on this instrument. She played 3 concerts at Rice, the first ever in Houston, on this historical instrument. I want you to hear a brief excerpt from her first performance on this piano, after only a year of adjusting to the quite different touch and action in comparison with the modern piano. Once again, she will let you, through music, access to her inner sanctum. While Kathi presented herself to many of us as a mostly reserved and quiet, sometimes even withdrawn personality, especially among groups of people, you will hear a much different aspect of her inner life of feeling in this excerpt communicated to a whole recital hall of strangers. So. Most people would not expect such fire and almost explosive energy from Kathi, but they smoldered underneath as the fuel for her iron will and perseverance. Not long after our term at Baker College ended, we moved to Washington University, where I was appointed as chair of the music department, and Kathi continued her teaching, both in the music department and privately, and still performed from time to time here at Eliot Chapel, both in chapel services and on Friends of Music concert series. Kathi, in fact, continued teaching piano for the rest of her life. Her last lessons were just a couple of weeks before she re-entered the hospital for the last time. You've heard indirectly about her teaching, but now I'd like you to hear in person from 3 of her students, all from the 37 years teaching in St. Louis. So if Ann and Sanjeev and Aaron would come up. You've got 3 chairs up here. So Ann, who is the youngest, will introduce herself, as Kathi taught her to introduce herself at recitals.
My name is Ann Auerbach, and today I will not be playing piano for you, and you're welcome. Don't get me wrong, Kathi was a wonderful piano teacher, but I'm a lot far removed from my piano lessons, and I won't torture any of you with that. Everything I learned from her in those formative childhood years has directly contributed to who I am today. From learning the discipline of practice makes perfect, or close to it, even though I was far from it in my later overextended high school years, to learning to sight read everything from popular tunes to dissonant notes that made my ears itch, and she knew it. From learning simple scales to more complex pieces, this all led to my first career as an opera stage manager. I didn't go to college thinking I was going to have a career in opera, but my ability to count higher than 8, deal with non-standard time signatures, and reading a lot of notes on a page led me to a successful opera stage management career. And while it wasn't my first show, working on Julius Caesar by Handel cemented my passion for opera because I had grown up playing Handel pieces. How wonderful to work in a world with such beautiful music. I don't work in opera anymore, but that led me to my last job and to the one I am in today. Now, I went hunting in my basement for a prop, and I was really, really hoping to find one of those great early books, Suzuki Book 1, that had all the stickers earned for a good lesson. But I found something better. I found a piece that I must have played in my later years, taped together for a recital. But I found a piece, it's covered in markings. I know you can't see it very well, but I'm happy to show it to you. That tells me a few things. One, I was probably practicing less and making more mistakes, and these are all the corrections. But I think it also might have been where I fell in love with using colorful pens and pencils in my scores. So that carried on to my career. But Kathi taught me more than a passion for music and for colorful pens and pencils. She taught me how to perform in front of a crowd, even sometimes unwillingly and with nerves and frozen fingers, and yes, my hands are freezing. She taught me how to be a human being. She was a wonderful role model and mentor, and she was a pleasure to get to know, not only as a kid, but as a grown-up as well. I know you're here because you love Kathi, and I'm glad to be in this room with so many people whose lives she touched. Remember, she lives within all of us because of the time that we were able to spend with her.
Sanjeev Mariathasan, can you show next slide, Ken? Yeah. You can see here at his graduation from the WashU Medical School, when he was a student of Kathi's, and Sanjeev is now you tell him.
I'm a scientist. I'm an executive director at Kite Pharma in San Francisco. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Jack, for offering me an opportunity to say a few words at this beautiful celebration. As Jeff mentioned, I met Kathi in 1987 when I was a sophomore in biological sciences. And I was a piano student, and she soon realized I was pretty hopeless with technique, yes. But what that she focused with me was the sense of musicality, the tenderness, and the sensibility with which to approach piano playing. And I think that was still sticks with me today. And then secondly, as Anne just mentioned, I also had in my notes, by the time I finished a piece, the score would look like an impressionist painting with all these colors. With every mood would have a different color. And nowadays I have two daughters, identical daughters. One is a cellist and a pianist. And I look over their iPad, it's just black and white. And I was like, man, you guys are missing out. Right? So anyway, she was more than a piano teacher for me. I think she was a mentor, a caretaker, and a dear friend. I think she was there for me. She taught me how to drive. She took care of my bad teeth so I can smile. She is the one who started the cello for me when I broke my knees and I couldn't get to the practice rooms. This is somebody who kind of thinks about you all the time and thinks beyond, right, I think. She was there when my dad passed away quite young. She was there when kept my sanity when my mom was running around the world as a refugee with my two young brothers from the civil war in Sri Lanka until they settled down in Canada. So to me and to my extended family, she was an absolute rock star, this American who took care of their son, this immigrant son, the cousin, the brother. And when she came to Toronto in 1998, when I got married to my husband George, she did all the music for that. But she was a rock star there because not only the music was amazing, but finally they were able to see her in the flesh, this person who helped me. So thank you. And her impact, what she has done for me and my family, is still palpable. When I smile, when I give my daughters the driving lessons today, or when I hear them practice the piano and the cello, her legacy has really, really passed on to generations to come. And so to Kenny and Julie, thank you for sharing your mom with me. And Jeff, you were just phenomenal the last years taking care of her and bringing her to San Francisco one last time last summer was absolutely a special treat. Those 3 days that you spent with us. The house turned into a conservatory. The kids were practicing left, right, and center to show off to Kathi and Jeff, I'm sure. But it was just wonderful. And then in closing, I said in life, there are some unique and special relationships that happen only once in a lifetime, and this was certainly one of them. And I'm just so glad that she was born. Thank you. Yeah.
And now, let me introduce Erin McConis, who is a professor of medicine at the Washington University School of Medicine, and actually has been taking lessons from Kathi from just about when we first arrived in St. Louis until actually hers was the last lesson that Kathi gave, about 3 weeks before she taught.
So you'll forgive me if I also get a little verklempt here, but it's okay. It's okay. So my name is Erin. I'm here today as a piano student and friend of Kathi Kurtzman. And I came to her as an adult student. I had taken piano lessons as a child, but family circumstances changed. I was not able to continue, but I knew that I would come back to the piano. And when the opportunity finally opened, I was led to Kathi, who had me bring in the last book I had used probably 15 years before, and we started right where I had left off. That's the kind of teacher I had. I think, but rather I know, that teaching is the most important profession. the world is like this. We are all teachers, right? We are all teachers. If you disagree with me, we can talk later and I'll convince you. We are all teachers. Some hear and respond to the call and become professional teachers. And we have all had these individuals in our lives as well. And then some become music teachers, the cream of the crop. There is a lot that has been written about the power of music. I will give one example I found when I was reading the New York Times yesterday. It was a guest essay by the children of Leonard Bernstein about their decision to allow his music to be performed at the Kennedy Center. And they wrote, in every circumstance, after much soul searching, our father chose to play music. He believed in music's power, its emotionality beyond words, its harmonic architecture, fundamental as DNA, to raise listeners to a higher level of discourse where beauty would outshine violence and hate. And then they quoted from a speech he gave in 1963. When we touch one another through music, we are touching the heart, the mind, and the spirit all at once. So I rest my case. Music teachers are the cream of the crop. Kathi has been my teacher and friend for 35 years. It would take too long to summarize that. So somehow, Kenny, like you, I settled on 3 points that I think are illustrative of lessons with Kathi. I'm sure I will identify more as I continue to think about this, but here are the 3 for today. And they may resonate with much of what you've already heard today. So, point number 1, figure out what key you're supposed to be in. Sometimes the classical composers just cut to the case. I think we heard that today. I made this one up, prelude in G major for piano. You know where you are, you know what you're playing. But more often, figuring the key out requires thinking and listening. What is that scale? What is that chord? Is it major or minor? How does it make you feel? Life does not tell us what key we are in at a given moment, but if we listen, think, and feel, if we use our hearts and minds and souls, we'll find the key. And we know the key will change. So if it is dark or heavy or sad, it's minor. And we sit with that. And we listen for the change, and we go with that when it happens. Point number 2, we've heard this today multiple times. Good practice is good. I did not know how to practice, but Kathi taught me how, and in full disclosure, I am still a work in progress. But to take on a new piece, figure out the key. Are there any patterns or repeats? Where are the hard parts? Break it down into small bites. Play as far as you can without a mistake. And when you make a mistake, own it, fix it, do it right 3 times to get it into your brain and your fingers. Good life points too, especially about how to navigate mistakes. And unlike a piano lesson, life may not be such that you can fix something and then do it right 3 times consecutively, but once you do it right, be intentional about doing whatever it is right as often as you can. And point number 3, play what you love. Classical music was woven into Kathi's fabric, but we played all kinds of music. She taught me how to analyze and appreciate jazz, for example. She brought music she had performed for the Ladies' Friday Music Club. For example, a series of pieces that were titled For Colors, and we talked about how red would sound different from yellow or blue. She knew I loved animals, and she brought a piece one time, and I should know the whole title, but I don't because it was somebody's name and cat, and she crossed out that name and wrote my name and Aaron's cat. We sight read a book that featured more exotic animals and talked about how the elephant piece captured gentle lumbering and the monkey piece captured frenetic energy. And Every early November, we pulled out the Christmas music, sight reading all favorites, the old favorites, and then perfecting a more complicated one. And especially with that music connected to memories of holiday sights and sounds and smells and people. And it's that kind of connection, by playing what you love, that brings us to our authentic selves in community. So in summary, lessons from Kathi. Figure out what key you're in. Good practice is good. And play what you love. So I'm going to thank here, and I'm putting in order of seniority, and by that I mean age and not importance. Jeff, Kenny, Julie, Abby, Anais, for letting us share in this celebration with you, and know that I am here in gratitude and with love. Thank you.
I also would like to add a further portion of the message I received and earlier quoted from Diane Fanning. She said, when Kathi left Middlebury, she insisted on my taking over her students, her studio of private students, even though I was quaking at the thought, having had little teaching experience. She was sure that I could do it. She showed me her favorite teaching books for young students and gave me lots of tips for working with children. She started me on a path that made all the difference in my life. In the fall, it will be 50 years since I started teaching piano at the college. And I've received notes from other former students about what a difference in their lives Kathi made. It was during our earlier years in St. Louis that our family increased by a granddaughter from each of our children. Each had a very special relationship with Kathi in her new role as grandmother. The earlier one is Kenny's daughter, Abigail, who graduated from Whitman College in Walla Walla, Washington, and now lives in Austin, Texas, where she is product marketing manager for Ticinitus. And Abby would like to say a few words about what Grandma Kurtzman meant to her.
I'm also going to try to get through this without crying, because I've already been crying. Thanks, everybody, for being here today, and thank you, Grandpa, for giving me the opportunity to talk. The first thing I want to say is that I'm the least musical Kurtzman in the family. I don't play any instruments. I don't sing. I don't do anything like that. So it's really incredible just hearing how many other people were affected by her musicality and what she taught them, but our relationship was a little bit different since it wasn't centered around music. She sparked a creative streak for everyone in this room, and myself included. As I thought about what to say, obviously I didn't have that music connection necessarily. Rather, all of our connections came from the books she read to me before bedtime, always retellings of ballet or mythology. We would go to the bead shop in Rice Village, which I think is still there, all the time. And I remember just loving the explosions of colors, picking out my beads, and deciding on the order to make bracelets with her. I wish I still had them, but they were not very pretty. I think I just picked things that I liked and put them on a string. We were also frequenters of the Blue Hand, a shop also close to the village that had incense, African masks, and plenty of other interesting trinkets and items I had never seen before. This encouraged my love of art and history at a young age. While I wasn't playing the piano with her, I was adventuring to new worlds with these books read at bedtime, these trips to the stores, and the gifts that she would give me over the years. My childhood bedroom at my dad's house had unicorn wallpaper, which I was desperate to have. It looked exactly like you're picturing. It was pink and cartoonish and very childlike. Seeing my love of horses, which I also had at that time, and obviously of unicorns, Kathi gave me a black wooden trinket box that had the unicorn illustration from the Hunt of the Unicorn tapestry, which was made in the 16th century. I'd never seen something like that before and was transfixed with this mythological version of a unicorn, not the pink cartoon versions I had known. This is what I remember the most fondly, is her expanding my concept of aesthetics, art, history, and of course, her pumpkin bread and her love of chocolate. She always knew what would interest me and always made sure to tailor these activities and gifts to what I liked, but was guiding me to more interesting and complex versions. Even recently, I have taken up making jewelry again at home, and while picking out the beads at Michael's isn't the same as going with her to the bead shop, it is an amazing reminder of her influence now she hasn't left us yet. We also, my birthday is the day before hers, so I know that will be something that I carry forward, as she is also a fellow Aquarius. Thank you so much.
Next one. The next one, Ken? Yeah, there we go. Yeah, thanks. Julie's daughter, Anais Reno, is about to graduate from the State University of New York at Purchase in the jazz program as a jazz singer. She sang here in St. Louis at the Blue Strawberry Jazz Club just over a month ago, on March 29th and 30th. Kenny and Julie were both in town for her shows, so all three were able to spend substantial time in the hospital with Kathi. She was too ill to be able to leave the hospital, but the Friday night show was live streamed to her in the hospital. And my younger brother David recorded the entire Saturday show on his iPhone and replayed it on the computer for Kathi the next day in the hospital. She watched it transfixed. She watched both sets transfixed, and the next day she told me it was a great gift that David gave me. 2 days later, Kathi left us. On these shows, Annie sang the song "You Go to My Head" by Haven Gillespie and F.J. Fred Coots, a song that she dedicated to her grandmother and sang especially for her. She'll say a few words and then sing the song for us together with Pete Malin-Verney, head of the jazz program at SUNY Purchase. Yeah.
Hello. After hearing all the beautiful qualities that everybody in this room recognized about Kathi, she's grandma to me, of course, I have to say that the strongest thought in my mind is what a privilege it is to be able to grieve somebody like that. Because while we know that she touched so many people, in the grand scheme of things, there's only a small percentage of the world who has been able to be as close to her as we all were in some way. And so the fact that we feel a void in our lives means that we had the privilege to know her that well. And I'm personally very grateful for that. And I'm grateful that I get to, through music now and through whatever decisions I may make that are influenced by the things she taught me as a person, carry her with me. She had this very casual way of making big impacts on you. And she didn't always understand it, I don't think, because it wasn't a big deal to her. I remember a couple years ago, she and Grandpa were in New York to see a show that my mom, Julie Kurtzman, was performing. And she was wearing a watch that I complimented. I said, "It's really beautiful. It suits you very well," and that was it. And then a couple months later, for my birthday, I received a small package, and this watch was in it. And I called her and I said, "Thank you so much for the present. That was incredibly thoughtful for you." And she said, "Oh, well, yeah. You liked it." And now I wear it as often as I can. And of course, while I know spiritually she's with me, it is nice to have something tangible to connect me to her. As Grandpa mentioned, I was here about a month ago for a performance at a jazz venue here in St. Louis, and I performed on the exact same weekend a year before, so March of last year. I booked the gig a year in advance for this March, and I remember when I was here and she was in the hospital, I couldn't help but think how serendipitous it was that I would have a gig that particular weekend in the same city that she lived in, and that it would be for 2 nights, so I had time before and after each performance to see her. And on the first night, I sang this song that Grandpa mentioned called You Go to My Head, and I prefaced it by talking about my favorite recording of it, which is by Frank Sinatra, of course. And it got me thinking about how she was the first person to ever tell me who Frank Sinatra was. I must have been 4 or 5, and there was a video of Sinatra and Ella Fitzgerald singing on my mom's computer in our old New York apartment. And I knew who Ella was, but I didn't know who Frank was. So I said, "Who is that?" She said, "That's Frank Sinatra, he's a very important singer." And I said, "Is he dead?" She said, "Yes, he's been dead for a few years now." And unbeknownst to me at the time, he would end up being an incredibly influential part of my musical growth, similarly to how my grandma has been to my personal growth, as well as musically as well. And I had no idea that that would be one of our last conversations on the day of the second gig, where she asked about that song. She said, "I've never heard that song, but you said Frank Sinatra sang it." And I played her the recording that I was talking about, which she loved. And of course, she passed a few days later, and that's one of my final memories with her. So it only feels right now to, wherever I can, in professional settings and as well as here, perform that song for you. It's called You Go to My Head, and I'm very grateful that Pete Malinverni said he would play it with me, so I hope you enjoy.
You go to my head and you linger like a haunting refrain, and I find you spinning round in my brain like the bubbles in a glass of champagne. You go into my head like a sip of sparkling burgundy brew, and I find the very mention of you like the kicker in a julep or two. The thrill of the thought that you might give a thought to my plea casts a spell over me. Still I say to myself, get a hold of yourself. Can't you see that it never can be? You go to my head with a smile that makes my temperature rise like a summer with 1,000 Julys. You you might give a thought to my plea, cast a spell over me. Still I say to myself, get a hold of yourself. Can't you see that it never can be? You go to my head with a smile that makes my temperature rise like a summer with 1,000 Julys. You intoxicate my soul with your eyes, though I'm certain that this heart of mine, it hasn't a ghost of a chance in this crazy romance. You go to my head.
How do you sum up the course and meaning of a life? We've tried to give you some idea of that life and its rich meaning to so many people. The best I can do are a few lines of verse, trying to speak for the experiences of family and friends. And I've asked Julie to read them because I'm unable to.
Filled with grace and indomitable spirit, your smile enchanted our hearts. Sweet and caring, generous and true, you harnessed the music of love, and we all loved you.
So Julie and Pete will now play one of Kathy's favorite pieces, Astor Piazzolla's Oblivion. Before ending, I want to thank Ken Denson for managing the live streaming and his invaluable assistance with the sound recordings. I also want to thank two very special people who are here today. Shamika Bowles and Kristen Sage. During Kathy's, excuse me. During Kathy's disability and illness, these extraordinary caregivers comforted her, helped her exercise, and took care of all her needs in a manner that eased her burden and buoyed her spirits. Kathy was very grateful to them, as am I. Now I invite you all to join us in Adams Hall for food and conversation and to see images throughout her life. There's also a memorial book that you can sign if you haven't already. And we'll exit to Kathy's performance of the Beethoven Piano Sonata, number 30, Opus 109, recorded in 1962. Thank you for coming.